In this video, I'm going to give you some key lessons from the book, The YouTube Formula. If you haven't read this book, I highly recommend it. It's incredibly well written with tactical and strategic advice. One of the first key lessons here is to invest in bold creative that has strong viral potential. So for example, there is this video advertisement for Squatty Potty that features a prince and a unicorn that is pooping. Very hilarious concept, very attention-grabbing, with a lot of virality. And basically what this did was it took Squatty Potty from a couple of $1 million in revenue to $28 million from a single campaign. You can see here that Squatty Potty has 50,000 subscribers. This particular video has generated 40 million views. And what it generated was a lot of comments, a lot of tagging, and a lot of sharing. So this big, bold bet really paid off. And that's the kind of thing that you'd like to achieve with YouTube. So this is consistent with the research that we have from Harvard Business School in the book Blockbusters. We can see that for success in entertainment specifically, what you want to do is make big, bold bets. So it's not about throwing out 250 videos and seeing which one is going to rise to the top, or hoping that add it together, they're going to generate a lot of views. It's more about, let's focus on a few key concepts that could go huge. And that's the most profitable approach to portfolios when you're in entertainment. Now, not all of you operating on YouTube are going to be in entertainment. You might be in something like education. So your approach is going to be perhaps a little less aggressive in this regard. But I still think it's worth pursuing. This idea that by investing a lot in editing and in concepts and screenwriting, you can come up with something that will go big and put you on the map. Now, let's get into some of the specifics. So in terms of titles, you want to have short titles. What is short? It's 60 characters or less. And then you also want to combine it with a thumbnail. And the foolproof concept to go with for a thumbnail is going to be people's faces, perhaps just one person's face, that builds curiosity. So we can see here that's what is happening here with Mr. Beast. We have a picture of his face. There's curiosity being built in the image, and you have an incredibly short title, Hydraulic Press versus Lamborghini, and it's 90 million views. So when we look at the data on YouTube, we see that the best thumbnails are a person plus an object. And that's what we have here, Mr. Beast plus an object, which is the Lamborghini in a hydraulic press. And it tells a story without words. So the story being told here is basically what's going to happen to the Lamborghini. Is it going to get completely crushed? And you notice there's no text on this image. A lot of people starting out in YouTube might be a little too aggressive in terms of putting text on images. So some more details on titles. What we're basically trying to do, according to this book, is satisfy two things. Number one is why, and number two is what. So what is the why? Well, it's the purpose of why you're doing this. So it's entertainment, education, inspiration / motivation. Is it to help people de-stress or relax? And then number two is the what. So are you presenting a solution? Are you telling people what they need to learn, or perhaps what they would find entertaining? Now, what makes for a very clickable title? There are a few key pointers here. The first is active voice. So basically the point here is you want to be clear and to the point. Now, I was recently reading my niece's book, Oliver Twist, written by Charles Dickens many years ago. And it was written in this very colorful, robust, pretentious type of language that was very, very difficult to understand. And that style of writing was in fashion back then, but today that's not what people expect. People expect writing to be clear, to be simple, to get to the point. So active voice is one way you do that. So for example, you could say he mailed the letter, which is active voice, or something that's a little more a roundabout, which is the letter was being mailed. You want to be relevant, trending, and topical. So it's important to stay on top of what is trending in the world, what is particularly popular on YouTube. Some of the biggest successes out there are from people that really want to catch trends early. So for example, if you've ever seen that funny ad of the guy that is in his garage showing off his fancy sports car, one of his biggest pieces of advice is to catch trends early, and you can gain some advantage there. Another thing is to use questions. So you can ask a question in your title to build curiosity. You can also include numbers. So for example, 7 essential reasons why maybe you need to buy this product, or why you shouldn't, blah, blah, blah. You could also use the approach where you're stating a problem and offering a solution to that problem. And you can also piggyback off a trusted source. So for example, you can reference NASA. You can really get attention if you address the viewer in the title. So for example, you could write advice for men over 35, and then men over 35 are really going to pay attention. You could call out any specific audience you want. You could say police officers, for example. If you want more advice on this type of copywriting, I recommend John Caples, and one of his books is called Tested Advertising Methods, and he's going to provide similar advice as the YouTube formula, which is addressing the audience in your titles. You want to use emotional drama or polarizing words. You want to capitalize your titles or words, and you can amplify with attention-grabbing words. So things like wow, worst, and DIY. Another piece of advice when you're writing YouTube titles is to put your main keyword close to the front of the title. So for example, to the far left at the beginning. So if my keyword was product marketing, I could start the title with product marketing, or perhaps the product marketing, or 7 product marketing tips. And this will help in terms of displaying properly in terms of SEO. Now, let's walk through 12 thumbnail creation techniques. These are different approaches that you can use depending on what the content of the video is. First is a face first. So the main point of the image is going to be a face with an expression. So maybe like a wow expression. You can also do a face plus an object. So I demonstrated that with Mr. Beast and his hydraulic press with the Lamborghini. Another example might be a man holding a doll. This could be your default approach to creating YouTube thumbnails. It's an approach that I certainly use a lot in my marketing. Another is to do object first. So for example, just a picture of a big car, a big desirable object. Number 4, 2 faces. So for example, it could be a picture of you and versus a celebrity or some sort of recognized face. Maybe it's a popular toy or the face of pretty much anything that you want. 5 would be 3 panels. So you have 3 sections. So the first section might be like small, second section will be medium, and the third section would be large. You could have also a 2-panel approach. So for example, you might have a before and after image to show how your product successfully transforms somebody's skin, as an example. You can use text to amplify. So for example, you could use the words day 2 to build curiosity. Oh, what happened on day 2? Maybe there's some mysterious thing happening in the forest. I believe beginners on YouTube have a tendency to rely too heavily on text on images, but be more selective, especially if you're doing something like entertainment versus education. Number 8, clip art. So you can use things like red arrows, hand gestures, and emojis to call attention to certain things. So maybe an arrow pointing at a UFO, for example. 9, you can use perspective. So something like a giant pumpkin standing next to a man. 10, organize clutter. So for example, sitting in a pile of balls. 11, showing action. So maybe you're swinging a sword at an orange, something like that. Number 12, using colors to draw in eyes. So for example, contrasting colors using the color wheel. In general, you want to release your videos 3 times per week on some sort of fixed schedule. The cadence matters more when you're not relying so much on search, because the release schedule is going to determine how much attention you get. And if you release your content too close together, they're going to cannibalize each other. Now, in the book, in the introduction, we have some commentary by Mr. Beast. And one of the things he points out is that the value you offer as a YouTuber is that you're essentially getting 10 minutes of undivided attention. Now, this isn't completely true, right? A lot of people are going to drop off before the 10 minutes are over. People aren't giving their undivided attention. They might be listening to YouTube while they're working or washing the dishes or something like that. But the point is still true that people are probably paying more attention to a YouTube video than they are to an advertisement. And that means that this is a lucrative opportunity for getting sponsorship deals by highlighting this to brands, that you're giving more attention to a product evaluation, for example, than people are ever going to pay attention to an ad. One really effective technique for YouTube videos is to do sweepstakes or giveaways. So even YouTube itself was giving away free iPad Nanos to get people to join YouTube in the early days. Very effective technique that you could use. They did similar things to get people to enroll in banks in Canada. You could also do something like anyone that has the app open at a particular time could get a chance to win $25,000. So very effective for mass marketing, these types of giveaways. Now, keep in mind what you're doing when you're creating YouTube. There are generally three approaches you're taking. You're either inspiring, you're educating, or entertaining. And these things really can sometimes work together. So there's edutainment, people that are educating but are also entertaining. But if you're, for example, trying to teach somebody how to do technical coding or how to fix their car or toothbrush, they're not really interested in being entertained. They're more interested in getting to the solution, getting to the point. And you need to keep that in mind. Don't distract them with entertaining things. Give them the tools they need to solve their problem. Another thing is that you have to be willing to pivot. So a lot of people, they just keep cranking out video after video and they don't have success, so they have failure upon failure. You need to be willing to pivot. Even YouTube itself started as a dating website, and imagine what a colossal failure it would be if they hadn't turned it into what it is today. One of your main objectives is really to align yourself with what YouTube wants, which is to get people to stay on the platform longer. So that would require things like creating playlists, so people not only watch your first video, but they move on to the second video. It means pulling people back in, keeping their attention, not filling your video with a lot of fluff that isn't going to keep people stimulated. You want to improve your CTR, your click-through rate, and your audience retention. And then what's going to happen is YouTube is going to push you to a wider audience because there's a high click-through rate on your image and your title, and because it's a very engaging video. Now, what you might see as you get bigger is that your performance metrics might start to go down a little bit, like your CTR, but that's fine because that's just what happens as you get bigger and bigger. You can't retain high percentages. So, for example, if we look at my YouTube channel here, we can see people aren't choosing to watch this video as often as some of your other videos. Changing the title or thumbnail can attract more viewers. So I have a low click-through rate on this video, which means I should probably come up with a better thumbnail and a better title. So unlike with general SEO, when you're working with something like Google, YouTube is going to give some preference to fresh content that's going to get pushed to the front. So this gives you a lot of opportunity when you're creating new videos where you're up against incumbents, but you're going to be given a chance. So what this means is don't blame YouTube when you underperform, blame your content. And don't just keep putting out content that isn't successful. You need to create stuff that is going to stimulate people. I've been staying with my colleagues for quite some time now, and they're very successful. They have videos that generate upwards of 80 million views each. And one thing that they really stressed to me was looking at trends and looking at what successful creators are doing so that you can really cater your content to what the market wants. And this is advice in the book too, is look at successful creators in your niche. You can think of them as competitors, you can think of them as collaborators, you can think of them as whatever you want, but see what the success trends are. In particular, focus on what their more recent videos are, because content they created 5 years ago may have been timely then, but may not be what's going to make you successful today. Another thing is consistency. So there's two ways that we can think about consistency. One is your scheduling. So this is doing consistent uploads on particular days at nighttime. But keep in mind, this doesn't really matter as much if most of your traffic comes from search. So keep track of where your traffic sources are and what makes sense in terms of traffic sources for you. Now, there's a second way that you want to be consistent, and that's in terms of what the content is. So think of YouTube as like traditional television. You have the sports network. It would be pretty random if you went into the sports network and one day there was a My Little Pony show. you need to stay consistent with some sort of niche. Now, you can be a bit broader or a bit narrower depending on what your needs are and how ambitious you are, but you should have some level of theme there and consistency. One approach you might want to take is to create an ad, a video ad, and get 800 influencers to watch and share it. And that's exactly what Turkish Airlines did. And they were able to garner 140 million views and 3 million social shares. Years ago, I did a similar approach to help growth hack a startup's product. What I did was I approached a few dozen influencers and I got them all to broadcast this product simultaneously to their audiences. And we were able to skyrocket and push this product to the tops of the charts by doing that. So don't just rely on organic, but also work with influencers. And later we'll talk about how advertising is also going to help you with your organic content. So something to keep in mind is that YouTube is a huge search engine, second biggest search engine that we have. So when you're operating at that scale, what that means is you can have a viable business within tiny niches. Now, often I'm very critical of niches because I just don't think they're big enough to generate huge financial impact for you. But if you're a one-person business or a family business and you're operating on one of the biggest search engines in the world, then you can build something viable on a narrow niche. So for example, there's a family quilting channel with tens of millions in annual revenue. Key thing you want to keep in mind is the ability to create videos that people want to share. And people aren't going to share videos that are just you bragging about your product. It's going to be something exciting or innovative or new. So for example, millions of videos were garnered by Aura Brush because people wanted to share the ad organically because it was interesting and new and not just your standard kind of toothbrush that people are already familiar with seeing. Another key thing is to resonate with your audience. You want to use words that your followers use to describe your brand. And one of the easiest ways to identify that is by looking at the comments. Your copywriting is going to get better when you use terminology they understand rather than kind of the vernacular you're used to using in your industry. Now, there are two key things that every brand should be concerned with. Number one is the brand's message, and number two is split testing, so things like A/B testing. But the main thing here is you need to stay true to messaging at all costs. So don't sacrifice the brand's message for the sake of what performs well in terms of A/B testing. So I could do A/B testing to generate a high click-through rate for something that is completely irrelevant to what my brand is or to what I'm selling. So it's not really going to perform well. An example of where split testing was successful was, once again, with Squatty Potty. And what they found from split testing is people were more apt to resonate with the $29.95 price point than the $24.95. So actually increasing the price enhanced performance rather than decreasing it, which is surprising. Another thing with YouTube is you do want to use advertising. So back in the day, it used to be easy to just post something on YouTube, post something on Facebook, post something on TikTok, whatever, and get tons and tons of views. It's very hard to do that now. The gold rush is over. So here's a quotation here. Organic growth may be slowing down from the gold rush days as the internet saturates over time. So this is natural. As competition comes in, there's no longer a shortage of demand, or a shortage of supply. So as it becomes saturated, you start to use advertising as a more competitive way to get noticed. The way to get seen now is best achieved with paid acquisition strategy or ad buying. And as long as your content is creative enough, you should be able to sustain. So basically, promote ads to content that's very creative. An example of a company that does that is Purple Mattresses. So I went into Facebook and I went to the Purple Mattresses page, went to page transparency, and this is where I'm able to see what advertising they're promoting. And for example, I can see this advertisement with their video to get ideas of videos I might want to create. We can also go to their YouTube channel and we see some interesting videos here. Overnight success, very short titles, purple double seat cushion with product demonstration here, kind of infomercial style, all sorts of cool ideas you can get there. We want to learn from Mr. Beast, the biggest YouTuber. And here's what he does. He imagines how people will feel and respond to every aspect of the video and makes decisions from there. So he's really dissecting every part of the video. He really thinks about what will get them to click and when they might lose interest in the video. But more importantly, he validates his intuitions with data. So he's looking at where the drop-off points are, where the troughs are, where the peaks are, and really optimizing the entire video experience around that. Unlike with some platforms, when it comes to YouTube, you really want to focus more on humans and less on keywords. The AI's job is to follow the viewers and predict what they will watch, and this is a good thing. YouTube is not out to get you. You have to optimize for humans, not search engines. So many creators put too much importance on keywords. YouTube looks far beyond keywords anyway. So they're actually looking at the content in your videos. And this really makes me think about Mr. Beast's approach, where he's thinking about the user experience throughout the entire video, how to keep it engaging. And one of the things you can do is after you release the video, if it's not performing well, change your thumbnail quickly. So if the CTR is low, you can change that. And if changing the thumbnail doesn't work, then change the title. Now, in terms of the description, you want to focus on the above the fold. And another key thing is you don't want to recycle the same descriptions over and over for your various videos. That may seem efficient, but it's not going to be effective. One of the key things that you're going to do with YouTube is employ different methods of storytelling. So let's talk about some storytelling formulas and approaches you can take. Number one is fulfill the promise in your thumbnail and title. Okay, if you offered a solution, then let's give some degree of solution in the beginning of the video, but then you need to re-engage and pull the viewer into the rest of the content. So for example, here is where you're going to talk about a backstory or your beliefs or some personal stuff that is going to keep people engaged. 3 is you want to fulfill the promise again. So maybe you're delivering on a stronger solution to the problem that they're facing. And then number 4 is you tease a follow-up. So again, what we're doing is we're trying to keep people on the platform. We're trying to keep people in your video. We're trying to do what YouTube wants us to do. Now let's get into some more details in terms of how to craft storytelling. So in the beginning, you can start with a hook. A hook is something that arouses curiosity. So maybe it's like a big explosion, or maybe it's a over-the-top promise that you're making. And 2, do re-engagement. So this is where you may do some sort of foreshadowing or introductions to topics that are going to come up later in the video. 3 is the setup. This is where you're setting up the climax. You're introducing what's going to happen at the peak of the video. 4, you do re-engagement again to keep people interested. 5 is you have the climax. So it might be the final achievement that your product has, or the big event that happens in your entertaining video when everything smashes, for example. 6 is what we call the goosh. So this is the bonus. This is the little thing that people stick around for even though the climax is over. So an example of this is at the end of Marvel movie credits, there's often a very funny scene that people sit around waiting to watch. And number 7 is the wrap-up, where you can summarize what's happening or talk about what's going to be coming up next. So you want to focus on a target audience, but you also want to look for growth. So you don't want to go so narrow that you have no opportunity to really build a viable business. So an example of this is Legal Eagle channel. So originally they started as content for law students to help them prepare for their standardized tests, but then they pivoted a bit to a more of a mainstream audience that was interested in the law. So looking at things like movies and how do they resonate with how the real legal system works. Here's a quote here. If you do it right, your viewers' behavior will change your content. So if you're going after a more mainstream audience, then you need to look at what resonates with them, what's going to get a lot of views on your content, and you need to change what you're doing. If you're so hyper niche that there's only 10 people in the country that would be interested, then that's not a good strategy to have. There's one channel that realized when they had an event that most of the people that showed up were 8 to 9-year-olds. So what they did was they started putting out more and more content that resonated with them. They didn't actually know who their target audience was until that event happened. So that's where you need to pivot. So some of the key content that you're going to create are going to be how-tos, best-ofs, vlogs, product reviews, cooking, gaming, music, pranks, kids education. This gives you some idea of what types of content will be successful on YouTube. And as you build this content, what you want to focus on are the micro moments, because these are the moments that people live in their lives. And that's really what's going to make you more empathetic, is understanding what they're trying to do. So there are 4 key ones we're going to focus on here. First is, I want to know. So they want to know something. For example, I watch a lot of videos on history, and I want to know about why the Industrial Revolution happened in England and not in Far East Asia, for example. I want to go, so maybe people want to go to a concert. Well, let's talk about that concert in our YouTube video. I want to do, so people want to go and do something. They want to go fix their car. Or lastly, I want to buy, and that's where you might do unboxing or product reviews and then have your Amazon affiliate link in that video. So understand the state of mind of people, the job to be done in terms of why people are there on YouTube watching your video. So to summarize those, we can articulate it differently. They're trying to find answers, discover new things, make decisions, be entertained, or buy something. Because YouTube is so competitive, it can be pretty daunting. And one of the key things that can give you a competitive advantage is Reddit. So the easiest way to use Reddit is to simply post your videos in there, particularly with an audience that is going to be really receptive to it, so niche groups. But you can also use Reddit for testing and research. You can ask people ideas or get their input, even going as so far as to present them with the video and saying, how would you improve it? So that'll give you a little bit of an edge over other YouTube creators that are more me-centric rather than audience-centric. So what you want to do is look at your big competitors' most popular vids that were uploaded in the last year. And the key things you're going to look at when you're doing this research is the titles, the thumbnails, the length of the video, the pacing. So a key thing here might be having more excitement, increasing the speed that you're talking to keep people engaged. Look at the call to action, look at the re-engagements, look at the descriptions, and look at the comments. So maybe there's somebody that's been very successful on YouTube in your niche, but you read the comments of people saying, oh, you could improve this or you can improve that. So once again, my colleagues who get 80 million views on videos, this is something they do. They look at the comments and see what the audiences want, and then they make it for them. Your click-through rate should drop as YouTube exposes you to a wider audience, and this isn't something alarming. So there's kind of a regression to the mean, where as you get bigger and bigger, it's harder to keep the percentages high. An example of this is McDonald's. I usually look at McDonald's on Google Maps, and I'm surprised that it has only a 3-star rating most of the time. But McDonald's is huge and successful, and that's just the reality of what happens as you get bigger. The percentages go down, but the overall impact goes up. Now, you can split test thumbnails and titles, and it's not going to be easy to do that with something like YouTube, but it is going to be easy when you use something like AdWords or Facebook ads, and that could give you some insights that may transfer well to the YouTube world. Now, not all the content you're creating on YouTube is going to be designed for entertainment. Often what we're trying to do is create something to sell something. And at the end of the day, that's really why people are even buying ad space anyways, or why people are creating YouTube videos, trying to sell something. So here's a formula that you can use. And this basically is coming from the infomercial world. One of the founders of infomercials demonstrated this formula using the Chop-O-Matic, a device for chopping up items in the kitchen. So we start with a hook, something to get people's attention, to arouse their curiosity. So this could be mentioning that this is the greatest kitchen appliance ever made. And then what you do is you explain a problem. So with this particular infomercial, what the gentleman did was he talked about the most important problems based on research. And this is a key mistake people often make when they're trying to sell something, is they start with small problems that they solve, or small use cases, and then they try to build up to the big climax. That's not really what you want to do. What you want to do is start with the biggest problem that you solve first, the biggest source of value. And for people in this case, it was doing things that were for cake baking or candy making, particularly around crushing nuts. So showing how easy it is to crush nuts. And that's what the research showed was the biggest problem. And then you present the solution, which in this case is the product, but your solution could be a free consultation, it could be a free ebook, it could be a special offer like a 50% off coupon, something like that. And then number 4 is you build credibility. And the way we do that with an infomercial type video is to do a demonstration. So the Will It Blend video was a great example of demonstrating how powerful it is at blending something like an iPhone, which is ridiculous, but effective. Demonstration is not the only way to build credibility, though. You could talk about your credentials. So, for example, I talk about how I went to the #1 ranked business school for marketing. Credentials, awards, recognitions, like showing up on Fox News, for example, or CNN, and any sort of public speaking that you gave, for example, at a TED Talk, all sorts of ways to establish credibility. Now, when you're trying to sell something, it's really about your message first. So your value proposition and content second. Now, with entertainment, it's pretty much the opposite. It's content first, your message second. So entertain people first, and then try to embed the message second. Now, one of the keys to success on YouTube is constantly doing analysis. So this is something that Mr. Beast does all the time, looking at the data. So what happened in the most engaging parts of your video, and ask yourself why that was particularly effective. Maybe it's because it wasn't entertaining, but it provided valuable tutorial information. That's something I find in a lot of my videos. Look at the bumps and collapses in retention and try to analyze what's going on there. In particular, look at where 50% of the viewers have left your video. Why did it get boring at that point, for example? Look at their traffic sources for proper comparison, because you can't really do an apples to apples comparison if people are coming in from different sources. Another key thing is you want to optimize for mobile. Mobile accounts for 70% of watch time. So even though most YouTubers are doing their editing and creation using their laptop or desktop, that's not where the users are consuming it. So don't be clouded by that bias that you have. Another key thing is to focus on recommendations. 75% of all video views come from recommendations. So this isn't traditional SEO like you have with YouTube, where you're just optimizing for keywords. So where are these recommendations coming from? Well, the first is browse, which is going to show up in the home page and subscriptions. Second is the trending tab. And then we have suggest it, which is going to show up during a current video that somebody's watching, and the what's up next experience. Now, releasing lots of content is great in particular niches. So this is when you're in something like gaming and kids content, but it's bad generally for others. Multiple uploads that are too close together are going to cannibalize. YouTube's not going to know which one of the videos it should be pushing. So you need to spread that out, and a typical cadence that's effective would be about 3 videos per week. Now, most people don't look at the description, but putting your metadata, your information in there, particularly at the beginning of the description with something like keywords, is going to be important, but don't overthink the description, because most people aren't ever going to open it. Another thing you want to do is bucket your videos into theme categories. So for example, maybe you started your YouTube channel with 30-minute documentaries, but maybe you want to do some quick funny videos about history. So you might have a 5-minute series, which is like quick snacks or history snacks. So you can bundle those together. You can bundle them into themes, maybe related topics, but they're not exactly overlapped, and section them off. Your #1 goal is to get the right type of viewer coming in quickly, so the algorithm can recognize them and know who to keep pushing it to. So one way to do that, as I demonstrated earlier, was going to Reddit, finding those subgroups that are very gonna have a strong affinity for what you're publishing, and get them to watch it first. And also just putting the proper keywords, hashtags, etc. into your video so YouTube knows who to deliver it to. Now, one of the key things with YouTube is keeping people on the platform, keeping them into videos. So use something that the author calls pattern interrupts to prevent boredom. So some examples of this is teasing what's coming up later in the video to kind of keep them watching. People do this all the time in the news, for example. The main event that they're going to talk about, they don't talk about first. They kind of build excitement for it. You can use sound effects. You can do something funny. You can use a clip of something else. So introducing B-roll, for example. If most of the video is of your face, well, introduce something that's a video of the city, for example. You can change your voice, you can clap your hands, or you can change the angle of the camera or do a zoom effect to kind of keep things exciting and interesting and new. The other thing to keep in mind is the AI loves predictable patterns and related content. So doing things randomly is going to hurt you in terms of the YouTube formula and algorithm. Key thing to catapult your success is going to be collaborating with big creators. So you can ask them to share your content in their community tabs. You can pay them to promote you, your product, your videos in the end screens. And you can also find out what creators to work with by going to the other videos your audience watched. So these might be potential partners. Maybe you can create a video together with one of those individuals. Now, the last thing I want to highlight here is the best formula for your success on YouTube is going to be a combination of paid and organic. This is the reality of being in a more mature market where there is a lot more supply, there is a lot of competitors. You can't just rely on organic. So amplifying very creative content with viral potential through paid advertising, paid promotions with other influencers is going to give you the highest probability of success.